Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Rhythm at Rome. I am one of your hosts, Benef, and I also have my friends Paul and Trecia. And we like to talk about encounters while traveling. So, those cultural encounters, those misconceptions, similarities, differences, or those culture clashes that we have where things just seem a little bit crazy to us because we're foreign, we're American.
Bizarre.
Yeah, bizarre. And so today we're talking about people that, for example, myself, I'm half Afghan, half American, and what it's like to
African
travel.
American, correct?
Black. Yes, sure.
Sorry. Just saying, be
um,
more specific.
okay, so this topic is interesting because I'm half Afghan, but I've never been to Afghanistan. So, what would it be like for me to travel back, not knowing the language, not fully understanding all the cultural nuances? Yeah, like that's very, very interesting. Like, I didn't even get to travel to Afghanistan in the military, which would have been definitely fascinating.
Well, but
So,
no, I mean, that would have been interesting.
no, it would have
Yeah.
been. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have felt safe, right? Because it's not a safe country to
Yeah,
travel to. But
right.
Mhm.
well, but being American, I don't know. So
That's
there's,
my point.
yeah,
That
Your
was my
right.
point.
cultural family. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, because of the heat of why we were there, I don't think it would have been the
Yeah.
experience that you probably would have wanted.
But so the fact that I don't understand the language, like that's a huge dead giveaway, right? That I'm not
Mhm.
Right.
100% Afghan. I don't understand all the cultural things, and I'm female, so there's definitely a difference with the way they
Mm,
treat women over there, which I would
Yeah.
probably not
right.
be down with. So I probably would have felt comfortable having my weapons with me, but I might have still had to have worn the headscarf. I think some women did when they were
Yes.
had to go out and
Yes.
about.
Hmm.
And
Right.
then, so would I have been like, say I was traveling just with my family, would I have been discriminated against? I don't know. And so that's what we're talking about. Uh, People that travel back. So we have some. I know we've used Tim a lot, but we do have an interview or a clip with
Sure.
Tim because he's Korean, ethnically Korean, but grew up American, went back to Korea. So he's got some stories to share about that. And then Paul, you met a man in Denmark who's,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that was fairly, and I don't want to say, well, you know me, because my ear is always, listening to everything around me and stuff like this too as well. And it was interesting. I was out in Copenhagen, Denmark, just visiting and also meeting up with old friends and stuff like this, and decided to just hop on a plane and go there for the weekend. And I was eating brunch and overheard this young adult, he's in his 20s, I believe. And he was talking with what looked to be a friend of his or something like this. And he was talking about, either he wasn't angry, but he was just like, like, why do I need to da 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 da, whatever. But I just heard the word, oh yeah, and I have to go back to Palestine, and and I live here in Denmark. Those are the only two things that I kind of picked up on. I was being nosy. And then I literally kind of like looked, and then he looked in my way, and then I just basically said, "Oh, you're from the Middle East. You're Palestinian." And he's kind of was like taken back. And from there, small talk. And he mentioned that, well, his family lived in is from Palestine, but he's was born in Denmark, but his family lives in Israel. So,
Wow.
I'm all confused now
Yeah. Mm.
because of what you're taught, and you're just like,
yeah,
how does that work? I
Mhm.
thought, whatever. And I just literally just was like, you know what, this is kind of interesting, and introduced and told
extremely.
him about, yeah, and told him about I do a podcast with two hosts, co-hosts, and would love to see if you'd be interested in sharing your story with me on your travel back and all this other good stuff. And being that you live in Copenhagen, Denmark, and was born in Copenhagen, Denmark, your experiences, because it has to be fascinating of an experience.
Hello, I'm Mac. My name is Mac. I'm 21 years old. I'm Palestinian, I'm born in Denmark.
I'm curious to find out, how was it growing up, or you're from Denmark, but you're Palestinian, immersing yourself into the Danish culture and also being, Palestinian? What was that like? Did you find it easy to immerse yourself there, or what was it like with the culture?
I have personally, I have never had a problem to immerse myself, let's say, in just different situations, or especially here in Denmark, I haven't had that difficult experience, but that's also because I'm born and raised here in Denmark. So for me, the Danish culture came naturally, and also the Palestinian culture came to me natural as well, because we were practicing these let's say, on the religion side, we were practicing these, religious things. At the same time, I was learning more about my culture, and I have traveled back to Israel.
Yeah.
But as my family who came all the way back from where the 1948, where my roots is from, I have traveled and experience how is it to be a foreigner in your own country, or where your roots are from.
But did you find it any challenges, or was it easy, or
to be honest,
with the culture of yours and the Danish culture together?
To be honest, when I think about it, I've had a harder time fitting in when I've been back to visit family down in Israel.
Okay.
Yeah, I find it actually more difficult there, because people or families ask me oh, what is best, Denmark or Palestine? And I'm just oh, they're both good. And then it was be this ongoing discussion. But here in Denmark, it wouldn't I would barely meet anyone who would ask me this, especially because they don't know where I'm from, and it's not oh, where are you from, you don't look like this. It's like me talking to another person.
Okay.
I'm not getting judged as being Arab or Muslim or this and that.
Fascinating. Okay. You said that you have family that live in Israel and you're from Palestine. And that's interesting, because I know the media make it seem like this big craziness and no way you can immerse yourself into culture and get along. Tell me how that was like, and is that something that was easy living, family members living in Israel?
That's the thing, we automatically go back to why social media is both a good and a bad, good and bad. Of course, you have good side and bad side. The bad side about social media in this context is on social media you see, oh, it's the Palestinians against the Jews. And okay, yeah, someone have that mindset, and even I've met Arab people or just Muslim people who have also had that mindset living here in Denmark, only watching the media, and also haven't experienced the Jews' point of view, but just me, even from my side, I see that even Arabic people have this facade of, oh, Jews are this bad because they did this and that.
So was it did you find it a problem culturally?
Culturally, I haven't found that a problem.
You guys were able to immerse each other and get together.
My family, we've all immersed with each other. It's not oh, I'm this, you're that. My family back in Palestine, they have Jewish friends, best friend, they get so good along and, work together. And even my own uncle, he was married to a Jewish woman, and religion, when it came to religion, it was a problem. But at the end, the family, they accepted, and it wasn't then, oh, now it's a problem, we have to you know, live after her, or she has to live after him. It was just, you know, natural. We got along. And like, just in general, I have seen my mom, who also speaks Hebrew, and I've seen how she got along also, you know, with other Jewish people, like if it's in a store, if it's in a restaurant, and this and that.
Everybody's diverse and within each other's culture.
Exactly. And my mom wears the hijab, so you know, you automatically see where she's from, but that hadn't made a difference. And that's where, you know, again, social media like gives you the wrong perspective, like that, oh, it's this against them. No, it's like we have to build our own point of view. We have to experience things ourselves. And that's like how, like, that's how I have like gotten my, or what do you say, that's how I have
wanted to make sure that people understand that people can coexist.
Yeah, that's how
I've
created
my cultures can coexist, especially now that no one really knows that, because what they see on TV or social media.
Exactly. And but I still had a problem, and this mindset, oh, we can immerse with the Jewish people, even though I had this uncle being married to this Jewish woman. Because again, I see all this and I'm just like, what the fuck? Why are they treating us like that? Blah blah blah. But at the end, like just this last year, I have myself like researched and done this and that, because I have heard things from when I was little and seen some things, but you know, I have researched it myself to see, is it true, and what can I learn? And that's why how I know personally, I don't want to make a fact or judge something before, you know, I see it and experience it myself.
So what I found interesting is that he didn't experience any discrimination while growing up in Denmark.
And that it's almost, it's amazing, and it's weirdly shocking to me.
Yeah, I was a little bit, I mean, perhaps I don't know that much about how the Danes react to immigrants.
Well, I do, so I can give a little bit of teeth to it, because I've been there many, many times. And in case whoever traveled to, first of all, Denmark is a lovely country. I love Copenhagen. And I've been there before there was an influx of immigrants, early 2000s and stuff like this. So it was very white. I mean, I'm just not going to sugarcoat it. And then I think, I don't remember where it just started, but it started at some point where there was an influx of immigrants moving into the Scandinavian countries. And I would say it was recent, as much as 10 years or less, this influx happening. When that happened, there started to be a little bit more unease, maybe, and protests, maybe here and there. And then there have been issues where I've heard, when I used to travel for work, where people would tell me stories of, oh yes, they're coming in, and they just used the word they. So it was interesting and fascinating to hear this and the way how they were speaking, kind of thing. So there was
just for clarification, they meaning just immigrants in general, or
yes. They meaning
but immigrants, is it an umbrella of,
No, they were specifically talking about Middle Easterns, because that was the influx, was the Middle Eastern and Northern
I wonder
African
if you had interviewed his parents, if they would have experienced something different, since he was born there. He obviously grew up speaking Danish and grew up with a culture, going to Danish schools.
And he didn't know anything else more. And I mean, different. And, you know, you heard him very confidently in his interviews, you know, that he never experienced any of this. And I would definitely suspect, you know, that there would be a difference, because probably, and you probably maybe can relate to this, Benef, from the Middle East as well, is that, you know, the parents probably wishes that he was a little bit more Palestinian acting, maybe, versus Danish acting. Because, and I think this was more of, I got this kind of off the cuff, not on the interview part, where there are things that his family wished he would be more like, meaning marry into a
Maybe
Palestinian.
culturally,
yes.
yes.
More culturally like, the Palestinian culture, travel more to Palestine,
right.
and
'Cause
Israel for that matter.
he does get some of the culture, because I believe he practices, he's some of the
Yes.
religion.
Right, he did, yeah.
But like traveling back to
Mhm.
Palestine or Israel where they live, he
Israel.
said
And that blew my mind. That
felt
literally
like
blew my mind.
he had a hard time fitting in,
Yeah.
because he's Danish.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest.
Well,
So
right, yeah.
He's
I mean, but
Danish.
that would be the same. Like, I'm American. I identify as being American, not Afghan. So
Yeah.
if I'm traveling
Yeah.
back to Afghanistan, it's going to be mighty strange for me to
Yeah.
adopt the
Absolutely.
customs and rules
Yeah.
there,
Yes.
without even
And-
speaking the language. He at least, I believe, speaks the language, right? He speaks Arabic.
He speaks Arabic.
Yeah, he does.
But
Yeah, he did say
I
that.
think, and I think what makes it, well, at least mind-blowing for me is because, like I said earlier, his family lives in Israel.
Well, so what the advantage that I find that he has is that he speaks Arabic. So
Yeah.
he's got that at least.
Right.
Without the language, it's really, really, really hard to have a connection. And I'm taking Farsi right now, for the third time in my life, trying to learn. But there's so many people that are trying to connect with their roots and by the language. So they maybe speak Farsi with their parents, but it's like bad Farsi, like improper grammar and stuff, or they don't know how to read and write, because it's kind of difficult to find in America places to learn how to read and write. And so they, but that's like, he has that already. I mean, for you, Trecia, like, your mom is from Belize, but they speak English there, so that definitely made it easier to have a connection, right?
Yeah, it definitely was easier. I mean, it's very similar to, the Jamaican patois, which I know, Paul, you can identify with, but which, any Creole, and it's called Creole, which is basically an origin. Every place has a Creole.
Broken English kind of thing.
Which is, it's a broken English, but Creole basically is, and everyone has a Creole really from their origin, which is just an origin of that language. So, so yeah, and to see it written, it looks like a completely different language, honestly. But it's funny actually when we see
it's definitely at least patois.
It looks
definitely
different,
a different writing, and it looks
but
wrong.
yes, it's a little different. It's funny too when we actually speak. It actually sounds dirty because we always make a joke about that too, but no, it definitely was easier for us in that regard. But it is something about that connection that you can have, that you only have with, with your family, and there is it definitely is a connection that you have with your family or with your culture when you're able to do that, and not having that, and wanting to discover that, you know, and I definitely know that my family, I think they found it very important that I knew where I came from, and I know I wanted to discover that. I wanted to know what that was, and I wanted to have a deeper meaning what that meant. So it was very important to me to travel.
Yeah, what was that like for you traveling back to the motherland?
Well, I mean, for me, it was. Well, just from my origin story, as you can see, it really kind of formed, it formed me really, from early on. It kind of, I don't know, it kind of really kind of gave me my basis, really kind of what home was, kind of made me and formulated me to who I am. It kind of gave me those basic principles, right? Can understand, and that's what I felt like he was trying to, really what he was trying to portray for him when he went back home. So that's why when he went back, he didn't feel accepted, because there was that feeling of home. It didn't feel like home.
It didn't feel like home.
It was, and
You know what I mean?
and I can relate to his side in saying that to it, because there is, and I probably get you know, some people agreeing with me from my Jamaican roots, that, you know, obviously traveling, number one, it's very, like, Jamaicans are very, very powerful, like strong-minded,
Oh yeah,
you know,
that's Caribbean
the,
in general.
you know, the flag, and Jamaica is that little country that produces lots of great athletes and
Mhm.
food and all this other stuff. But I know when I travel there, because sometimes there is, you feel like, or I felt like I needed to get accepted by my family that's still living there. Because a lot of times, obviously I was born in America, all my family is Jamaican. I was born in America, so I am Jamaican-ish, you know, Jamaican, like they would say. But, and I talk patois and I can do all that other good stuff, but I'm just not all the way because of the fact that, you know, I wasn't really born there. So
Yeah.
I had to do overtime and overdrive to like be like, look, damn it, my damn parents are from here and everybody else is from here. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not a Yankee, you know, I am, you know, everything in one. So I had to work overtime
Yeah.
in being able for them to, like, I felt like I needed to get acceptance.
Yeah.
Even
Like you
with
have
my-
to work harder to get accepted,
Right.
to feel, to
No,
have that
Exactly.
and you
sense of
absolutely do.
belonging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
you
that
do.
was interesting to me, that I was relating to that. And, you know, I loved it. Trust me, you know, there's nothing like, you know, a whole bunch of your family members and friends and everything like that. And, you know, food is the celebration of life for us, and you know, chit chatting and the experiences. So I just felt, and to this day, I still feel like I need to feel like, hey, look, I am fucking Jamaican.
Yeah. Well,
you know.
I mean, and I think that's what you experience is the same thing that Tim talks about, that sense
Yes.
of belonging
Yeah.
and like trying to find it, because
Yeah.
he, you know, he talks about growing up in white Indiana, but then, you know, trying to go back to Korea, or even to the West Coast where there's a bunch of, you know, Asian population there.
Yeah, I grew up in Indiana,
Okay.
and so Indiana is very white. And I mean, I'm an adoptee, so my family is either German and Irish. So that's the only world that I knew of, and it was very isolating growing up like that.
Okay.
Being the only Asian kid within 100 miles,
Yeah.
you know, and
Well, there's no Asian community, because like some parts of the United States obviously have large Asian.
there's some, not where I
Not
lived.
Okay.
No.
So did you ever travel to any other parts of the United States where there were Asian communities?
Actually, when I joined the Navy, when I enlisted in the Navy when I was 17,
Yeah.
the first place I went was San Diego for boot camp.
Okay.
And my God, California in general, especially Southern California, it is Asian.
So was
Very,
that like a
very-
different experience? You're like, oh, I'm not alone. There's other Asian Americans here.
I'm glad you asked that, because it is probably not what you would expect. It is the one time in my life when I thought to myself, I should feel like I belong. It should be the one time in my life finally when I don't feel weird or out of place. And I'll be honest, because I spent my whole life in such a big world, I don't think I've never been more uncomfortable.
Oh.
When I was surrounded by all these Asian people, I felt like I didn't belong with them either, because I didn't speak fluently Korean or Chinese or Jap or any other Asian language. And then, to be honest, Asian Americans are, they can actually be sometimes the most racist people that I've ever had to deal with.
Really?
Because, long be it blunt, they call us, people like me, Korean adoptees in particular, or anyone else who grew up with an adopted white family, they call us bananas.
Bananas.
Yeah, white on the inside, yellow on the outside.
Okay.
Or a Twinkie, that's the other one. Yeah.
I've not heard the Twinkie one. Okay, but that was in the United States.
That was here. Yeah, that was in California.
Right. Now, are these like people that just like immigrants, or are they people that were born in?
They're almost all first generation.
Okay.
So their parents were direct immigrants from somewhere, and they're the first generation. So they speak fluent English, they native English,
But also their own.
but they also spoke. They grew up with. They were raised in a Korean household.
So
or
that's
something
what
like
made
that.
it different then. Okay. And then when you were stationed in Korea, you had like a similar.
That was even more weird because then the Koreans, they were just befuddled as to what I was, because I would hear me speak this terrible Korean, and they're like, "Are you Chinese?" And I'm like, "No." Are you Japanese? No. They're like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, I'm American. And they're like, "But Korean, right?" Like, "Nah, yes, I'm Korean." But they're like, "Why do you talk like that?" And I stopped doing it eventually, but like it felt like every time I got in a taxi, I had to explain that.
Oh my God,
my
like your
life
whole
story. I'm like, look,
you need a recording.
여기는 입양인입니다, which means I'm adopted. I'm
Okay.
Korean. Yes, I'm Korean, but I'm an adoptee, so I'm sorry, my Korean is not so good.
But there's a large community of Korean adoptees, yeah?
Now there is.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Now, because that, it started with the Korean War, which ended in 1953. So the first wave, those guys now are, in their 60s.
So yeah, so my thoughts just keep going back, and I feel like I'm tripping over my words, because the theme that just keeps coming back to me is, when I was trying to explain myself between our two interviews, is just, Mag and Tim, is every time I know that I go back to Belize, and every time that I think back, it's trying to recreate that feeling, because to me Belize is home.
Yeah.
It's the feeling of home. That's what I'm getting. I can't bring it to words, because it's a feeling. Home, Belize to me is home.
Yeah. And as like I said, I mean, belonging is part of the feeling and stuff. I can relate 100% to that, as well as to what Mag had to say too as well. But at the same time, it's a sense, like I said earlier, it's a sense of me wanting to get their respect. Because as a Jamaican, not born in Jamaica, but your whole family's from there, I get I don't want to say picked on, but you're not Jamaican enough,
For
you
sure.
need to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
need
But
to
that's a
prove your
feeling too.
Jamaicanness.
You need to feel respect. You need to feel respected
Yeah.
as well, right?
But I shouldn't do that, because you know what I mean? I don't know how to even put it into words, but it's like, yes, it is a feeling, but it's like you have to get initiated to get someone who's Jamaican to say, yep, you're fully Jamaican. Even though I did not have, I couldn't choose where I
Anointed.
was going to be. Yeah, I
Yeah,
couldn't
man.
choose.
I mean, you had
but
different experiences than them,
yeah.
obviously, growing up in America.
And believe me,
Yeah.
I talk patois very well. And trust me, you don't want me to lash some words out right now, because
But you're saying it's not enough for them. Is that what you're saying? It's not enough.
it is at times. And then when we start to, mannerisms or the way I'm talking, because all of a sudden I turn it on and turn it off. And then they're like, what is going on here? What is wrong with your voice? What is this? What is that?
Chameleon. Look at this
Yeah.
chameleon over here.
A chameleon, right? Well, I mean,
it's
and that's the
crazy.
same thing. Like, Tim's Korean was not good enough for the Koreans,
Yeah.
so they're like,
Yeah.
"Well, are you Chinese? Are you
Yeah.
Japanese?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
But then he also grew up white, so he wasn't good enough for the West Coast Asians.
Yeah.
The immigrants. It was just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what the
I mean,
fuck, like that's,
and that's
Yeah.
that's the part that is interesting to me. Like, obviously I love my family and love, the culture of where, my family's from and everything, because that's what made me and stuff like that. But don't get it twisted. My Jamaican can come out whenever it wants to come out. So
When they
no
want,
bother
when they
with
want.
me. You no bother with me. That's just an example. So
yeah.
And that's
check yourself.
true that. Check yourself. True that.
I'm curious. Can I just ask you then, Benef, and you could choose to answer it or not, or it might be another podcast. What was the reason why your parents or your mom did not teach you Farsi when you were younger, where it'd be easier to learn?
Yeah, so she did speak to me in Farsi all the
Oh.
time. I was speaking both English and Farsi together, so like a mix of the two languages, because at that point maybe I was 3 or younger, couldn't separate the two languages, as kids don't.
Yes.
And so this would have been 1978 in
Mhm.
Madison, Wisconsin. Okay, so just
Mm.
get that image in your head. All right,
Mhm.
it's a university town, so generally more diverse. But I'm going to preschool, and it's probably mostly white.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but I've been told that nobody could fucking understand what I was saying. The only person that knew what I was saying was my mom, because she spoke both.
Mm.
So it wasn't, because my dad is American, right? He's African American. He
Right.
doesn't speak Farsi. So they were speaking English to each other, my mom and my dad. So,
Okay.
I didn't have that distinction to, oh, I speak Farsi with my parents, I speak English outside of the home.
Yeah.
It was just both. And
Mhm.
because I was struggling. I mean, apparently no one understood what I was saying. So that's like a lot of stress for a child when I'm asking for like water, I don't know. Or I got to go to the bathroom and no one knows what I'm saying. So they went to a child linguist. And now I don't know if this guy was white. If my mom and my dad are watching, you need to comment. Was it a white child linguist? Because his advice was to stop speaking Farsi. Now it's in 1978, so that advice apparently
sounds a little political.
made sense. And they, against their better judgment, they just wanted me to probably not be suffering anymore. They stopped, and I never picked it up again.
Yeah.
Well, this has certainly been a very interesting discussion, and I want to thank Magd and Tim for sharing
Yeah, definitely.
their stories.
Yeah.
So thank you also to the listeners and the people watching. If you liked our show, please follow us, comment, subscribe, and we hope to see you next time.
Ciao.
Ciao.